It's time to get educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. We got a great program for you today, so please hit that share button and let's get educated. Today's show is sponsored by Mike Lindell and our friends at MyPillow. Many of you know that MyPillow was kicked out of most big box stores for supporting Donald Trump, but their loss is your gain. With the holiday season upon us, MyPillow is offering their classic pillow for just $20 when you use the code Dr. Duke. That's DRDUKE. You get a classic MyPillow for $20. You can also save up to 66% on all other items when you visit MyPillow.com. Look, we're doing our fundraiser here at Freedom Project, our school, Freedom Project Academy. If you go and buy something from any one of our sponsors, including MyPillow right now, any money that comes to us because of that sale goes right into our tuition assistance program, helping underprivileged kids go to our school. So 'tis the season to be jolly. 'Tis the time to be thankful at Thanksgiving week. If you need any pillows, you need any hand sanitizer, or any of the other wonderful sponsors that we have, please consider making a purchase today so that money comes right back to help underprivileged kids. Today we start with an unbelievable idea that is actually starting to build momentum on the left. Really not that surprising, I suppose, but will parents eventually have to obtain a license from the federal government to raise their children? This has been coming down the pike for a while. You see, we are in an era right now where the progressive left, the anti-family, anti-parent left, is consolidating their power at a shocking pace. We've talked about critical race theory. We've talked about the radical sexualization of your kids in the classroom. We talked about how the progressive left is forcing transgender ideology on your youngest children. You're going to see some more of that before we leave the show today. And on top of it all now, if they're already doing those things, they realize that there's nothing you can do. We've said this for a long time. The system of the public school is completely closed off to us. From kindergarten through all the way through high school, many of the teachers, all of the teachers' unions, all of the educrats, the principals, the superintendents, the state apparatus when it comes to education, I don't care what state you're in, is liberal. The state educational boards are liberal. And then you got the federal government, completely sealed off from top to bottom. Now that they have consolidated that power, the logical question the progressive left is now asking, maybe we shouldn't let parents be parents. Maybe we shouldn't let homeschool teachers teach unless they get degrees from big universities. Maybe parents have to pass a test before we'll allow them to educate or raise their own kids. This is moving very fast.
And that's the thing. When you start at the end saying, well, you want to have kids, you need to have a license, you think I'm wearing my tinfoil hat and I'm a crazy loon. But as you set it up, and as we've set it up on the Dr. Duke Show for several years now, we're creeping towards it. And all it takes is one person to say, yeah, okay, you can do that over here. And, okay, you can teach them about a little bit about LGBT. And then, all this critical race theory. Well, they should know about this. And it just keeps creeping and creeping. And we're getting to the point where, yes, in fact, down the road here, you may have to get a license to raise your own child. And the essay that was put forth that we're discussing specifically is from Stella Morabito. She talks about it in an article called "If the Left Ends Parent Rights, You Might Need a License to Raise Your Own Child." And she puts forth some provocative thoughts that, it's really not that insane to think about based on everything that we've been talking about for how long now. And what's interesting is she actually specifically cites an ethics professor named Hugh LaFollette, who laid out the idea way back in 1980. And it was an academic article that was titled Licensing Parents. And in it, as Stella says, she talks about, that the biological parents should have basically the same kind of process that's required of adoptive parents, such as interviews, psychological testing, and home visits. That's what Hugh LaFollette was saying in his thesis. And he says that the state licensing would maximize parental competence and minimize the potential for child abuse. Well, obviously, you want kids to be raised up without having any abuse and have parents who have competence, except we're talking about your biological children, the parents need to have a license. And as an ethics professor, how could you even make that jump to it?
Well,
but he did.
It's interesting that 30 years later, from 1980 all the way to 2010, which is awful close to where we are today, La Follette is still fighting, right? He's advocating for an incremental path to licensing parents because the resistance to his idea was so overwhelming 30 years before. So rather than give up, progressive Marxists never give up. They play the long game. Here we are in his 2010 follow-up essay titled Licensing Parents Revisited. Of course it is. He suggested we take steps like requiring courses in parenting, giving tax breaks to parents who voluntarily get the license to parent, and monitoring parents and much more. He also noted that we should question the right for people to procreate, right? Maybe you shouldn't be allowed to reproduce at all unless you take a parenting course, right? Why should we let you have children if you already fail our curriculum about how you should raise that kid? He didn't quite go so far as to mention what we should do about pregnancies. And of course, the important thing here that I think you have to remember is if this sounds like a crazy idea, it's not a new crazy idea. This goes right back to so many aspects of what's happening to your kids' education in public schools. It's going right back to the Marxist Revolution of 1848 when Marx wrote his Communist Manifesto. In that very book, he calls for this. He calls for parenting to be transferred away from individual parents and to the state. It's all about control. It's not the least little bit about education.
Well, and we know, I remember from my childhood, that one Hillary Clinton and her famous cry of how it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I get that, but not in her sense. Maybe a village of like family members, not just, you, the government, doing the raising of the kids. And it's interesting when he's talking about this, we're going back to Hugh and his social engineering of all of this. His original thesis in 1980, he was actually trying to compare, well, you get a license to like drive a car, so obviously you need to get a license to have a child. Like he's trying to equate these things. And mom and dad, if you're sitting at home going, that makes absolutely no sense. Well, it doesn't, but this is the man putting it forward.
And this is not surprising in education because you see it in every aspect of American life. You do not have innate rights anymore. This is when the Constitution goes away, what a remarkable document it is, right? The Constitution makes clear your rights come from God. And one of the key rights in particular, it may not be spelled out letter and chapter and verse, but it's implied. You're the parents. You have the right to raise your kids. All those rights that aren't specifically given to the federal government belong to the states and the individual. That includes the right to educate your child as you see fit. And so this is the problem. The progressives are already acting as if the Constitution is a null and void document. It is a racist, sexist, bigoted, old-fashioned, completely unnecessary document. They're operating by socialist government already. Government by fiat. Government not by congressional passing laws, not by the typical due process by which we change culture. None of that. They're doing it by diktat now. And this is a big problem because, as Jefferson warned you, that government who gave you rights can take it away, and that's what they're doing now. They're going to make you apply to maybe get some of your rights back, and that includes the right to educate your child.
Are you a fan of the show? Consider joining the Patriot Club. Your tax-deductible donation of $99 a year keeps us going. Simply visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us to pledge your support and receive our signature tumbler as a token of our appreciation. We've got much more to come. Stay with us.
For several months now, at least, we've had many instances where parents are stepping up and speaking out in front of school boards. And a lot of the time it's been about, critical race theory or the mask mandates. Sometimes it's been about, sexualization of their children in schools, what they're reading. This time we have a story of a father who's pro critical race theory, and he's actually not so much talking to the school board as he was kind of yelling out to the school or the parents at the school board meeting. So now parents are basically threatening other parents, and it's starting to get pretty ugly out there. We have a Fort Worth, Texas man at the Fort Worth Texas Independent School District. Malik Austin is the dad, and he basically threatened parents about teaching critical race theory because he says it should be.
For those who got an issue with this critical race theory equity, it's something I fought for my children. How dare you come off in here and talk about the things that my daddy and my grandparents went through, the lynching, the oppression, Jim Crow, and my kids are still being afflicted by this. How dare you come off in here and challenge me on critical race theory? Look at the word racism. This is something deliberately done to people of African descent to shackle us down. This hate, fear, mugging won't work no more. It's over with. We are not our ancestors. I got over 1,000 soldiers ready to go.
The assumptions of this father are very telling, right? He says, look up the word racism. This is something deliberately done to people of African descent. And so he's bought one of the great big lies of the progressive left, that racism is exclusively a white problem. It is and the only victims of racism out there are African Americans. You can see how the system has shaped his mind. He goes on to say, they're shackling us down. They're still doing it today. These are outrageous claims. They are not based in fact. And the more he yells about them, the more he doesn't make his point. Now, here's my question to you, Katie. Given that, unlike the other moms and dads we've seen, this father actually threatened people.
Yeah.
He said, I have an army basically 1,000 strong, and they are locked and loaded. This, my friends, is the kind of incitement that Merrick Garland said that we at the FBI have to investigate. Threatening people with violence. Is this not the kind of... Should the FBI now be visiting this father?
Probably should and will are two different things. But he ends his speech, because you're only given 1 minute at these school board meetings, which he stayed right within his 1 minute time frame, so good on him to know that.
But he wasn't wearing his mask.
But he did end with, I got over 1,000 soldiers ready to go. And basically what happens next then is he had to be escorted out of the building by officers, because between other people in the audience saying things and then him saying things back, they felt it was a little tense. But here's the next part of this, the video, when you mentioned locked and loaded. As he's being taken out, he yells that locked and loaded, as if these soldiers, 1,000 soldiers, are locked and loaded. Take a look.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring my soldiers with me next time. So we'll lock and loaded.
Locked and loaded? Did you just threaten me?
So according to Austin, they talked to him. His response to what locked and loaded means isn't apparently the same as, I guess, pretty much everyone else who watched that. He says that First Amendment rights, freedom of speech need to be implemented, and that his use of locked and loaded actually is a term that he used when he used to coach football. He said it means prepare and get ready. My question is, what comes after prepare and get ready? For what? What does he mean?
Well, it still is a martial analogy, right? He's using a gun analogy. And also the thing that gets me, I've seen moms and dads again and again and again protesting critical race theory who then quietly go back to their seat. And they listen to other protesters. They listen to critical race theory people speak. This guy gets up there, he issues his verbal manifesto, makes his threat, and storms out of the building. So, continues to gripe back and forth before he has to be removed.
Yes, he had to be removed. And that's why we have one grandma named Carol, who is a grandma of 4 students at the school district. She said she was in the building at the meeting and said that everyone there felt threatened. This gentleman was profoundly angry. He was not putting on a performance. When he made the statement that he had his 1,000 soldiers and they'd be back locked and loaded, it was very frightening to me. I was thinking about calling my husband and having him come to the parking lot because I was afraid to come to my car. This is the status of where we're at with school board meetings. I remember when I was reporting on school board meetings, I was the only person in the audience. I'm happy that parents are actually going to these school board meetings, but we're at the point now where it's dangerous to go to these school board meetings because you don't know what's going to happen to them. Chaos may ensue, and that is not what we need at these school board meetings.
And with all due respect for that protester, school boards, if this is your alliance, if this is the people who support what you do, this is even more call that you really ought to rethink your positions on allowing parents to have a real meaningful say in what their kids learn.
Today's show is sponsored by Clean Start Hand Sanitizer. For an odor-free foam hand sanitizer that lasts 2 hours and provides 19 refills, visit freedomproject.com/clean. That's KLEEN to order yours today.
Well, we're getting into the holiday season. It's coming about quickly, and maybe you're considering getting a teddy bear for your son or daughter. But do you know, is that teddy bear a boy or a girl? Has that teddy bear told you? If you don't know, then you obviously have not read a book about teddy bears that has a teddy bear coming out not as a boy, but as a girl. And in Connecticut, we have a parent who reported about introducing Teddy. That the West Hartford Public Schools said they can't opt their kindergarten student out of reading the said book here about introducing Teddy, because we need to know that teddy bears, what gender they are, and that they can change genders too in kindergarten. So here's the book summary for our friend Teddy. One sunny day, Errol finds that Thomas is the teddy, Thomas is sad, even when they are playing in their favorite ways. Errol can't find out why, until Thomas finally tells Errol what the teddy has been afraid to say. Let's watch.
Introducing Teddy. What's wrong, Thomas? Talk to me. If I tell you, said Thomas, you might not be my friend anymore. I will always be your friend, Thomas. Thomas the teddy took a deep breath. I need to be myself, Errol. In my heart, I've always known that I'm a girl teddy, not a boy teddy. I wish my name was Tilly, not Thomas. Is that why you've been so sad? Errol asked. I don't care if you're a girl teddy or a boy teddy. What matters is that you are my friend. You're the best friend a bear could have, said Tilly.
Does it look like a bear? It looks like an otter. I mean, how do you get bear out of this? Why is he wearing a bow tie around his belly button? And in what universe is this actually a bear? And of course, what is really troubling about this is the manipulation of little kids. This is for kids as young as 5-year-olds. As Katie pointed out, we'll show you in a moment a list of some of these books that these kids are being read in kindergarten, and they are not allowed, Connecticut is not allowing them to, moms and dads, to opt out of this program. And what's bothersome about this is you're actually taking an inanimate object now that by definition has no gender. A teddy bear is if that's what you can call what that image was, is actually a sewn-up toy made out of cotton and wadding, right? It is not a gendered thing. And so when you look, with all due respect, when you look between the legs of a teddy bear, for a reason, you don't see a penis or a vagina. You see nothing. Now what you're teaching kids is that inanimate objects are gendered, even though there's nothing to see there, right? So you are projecting your weirdness onto inanimate objects in a very, for lack of a better word, paganistic way. It's disturbing.
And at this same school in kindergarten, they only get, introducing Teddy as one of the options for the books. They get to read a whole lot more, including let's talk about race. Well, of course we're going to talk about race. And, who will you be? Who's in my family? Pink is for boys. And my name is Elizabeth. Well, I mean, with books, that makes me just want to read those books myself. Said no one ever. This is happening, though, at this school district. And of course, from Dr. Rosanna Haskins, who's the Director of Equity Advancement. Well, she's got a lot to say. A 5-page memo she wrote saying that the school district teaches social emotional learning through an equity lens adapted from the Learning for Justice, Social Justice, and Anti-Bias framework. Now that's a whole sentence that says a whole lot about nothing.
And you could simply use three letters to describe it. CRT. It's time now for some real education. The Duchess of Malfi by John Webster. It's probably maybe a play you've never heard of. John Webster was one of Shakespeare's great contemporaries. In fact, I think he may be one of the 2 or 3 greatest playwrights in the age if you took Shakespeare out of it. And one of the things about Renaissance drama, if you haven't had a chance to read it, even if you removed Shakespeare from Renaissance drama, particularly English Renaissance drama, I'm talking about 1580 to 1642, Elizabethan and Jacobean plays. If you remove Shakespeare from that period, Renaissance drama is still the greatest period of drama in human history. It is stunning the level of achievement that those playwrights managed to get in a space of 40, 50 years. Names like Ben Jonson and Christopher Marlowe should be much more familiar to you than they probably are, because Shakespeare sucks up so much oxygen in the room, deservingly so. He is quite a bit more advanced even than they are in terms of his genius. But one of these plays that is almost Shakespearean in its darkness and its tragic form is a play called The Duchess of Malfi. So as we begin, John Webster, we don't exactly know when he was born. He's a complete mystery to us. He's one of those Renaissance figures that nothing is really known. We don't even know his dates. Somewhere around 1580 he may have been born, died anywhere from 1625 to 1635, we don't know. He was an English Jacobean dramatist best known for this play, The Duchess of Malfi. His life and career overlap that of Shakespeare's. We know next to nothing else about him. His plays are very complicated, subtle, and demonstrate great learning. We know he was a college graduate. Webster is the Elizabethan and Jacobean dramatist with the most dark vision of human nature. His tragedies are so dark, so remarkably dark. The view of human nature that is taken away from these plays is pretty staggeringly negative. There's very little turnaround in these plays, but the imagery and the language are just simply beautiful. Take, for example, this passage, where you have one of the main villains of the play talking about what human flesh is. Why do we spend so much time taking care of our flesh when we're only going to have it for 40, 50, 60 years? And you think about how much time every day we spend on our bodies, which are constantly dying more every day, and we neglect our soul, which existed before we were born and will exist eternally after we die. And so he gives you the following reflection. Bosila is one of the characters' names. He says, what is this flesh? What is it? It's a little crude milk, fantastical puff paste. Is our flesh really any more than a paper mache when you think about its vulnerability and its subsequent deterioration at the hands of time? What is this flesh? A little cruded milk? Fantastical puff paste? Our bodies are weaker than those paper prisons boys use to keep flies in. More contemptible is our body, since ours is to preserve worms, because ultimately what's going to control this flesh when it's put into the ground, what's going to have its feast, are the earthworms. He goes on, did you ever see a lark in a cage? Such is the soul in the body. This world is like her little turf of grass, and the heaven o'er our heads like her looking glass. It only gives us a miserable knowledge of the small compass of our prison. Like a bird in a cage is the soul in the body. Why do we spend so much time pampering this flesh, which has got one destiny and one destiny only?
All right, before we go, let's show some love to our Patriot Club members. Today, we're giving a shout out to Carolyn from Idaho Falls, Idaho. Thank you for supporting us. And that wraps up this show for Freedom Project. I'm Katie, and he's Dr. Duke.
Until next time, stay educated, my friends, and let us help you.